How long will it be before the White Sox are good? 2 years? Could be possibly longer, according to my guest. Next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fan Side Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, I wanted to get someone else's perspective on just how long you and I should expect it to take for the White Sox to be good. And someone who I think actually has a good pulse on it is the former host of this very show, Herb Lawrence, who joined me to discuss that topic along with the team's offseason moves. But before we get into that conversation, Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Well, thanks for joining me, Herb. And Herb, exactly how long do you think it's going to take before anyone should really think that this team's going to be competitive?
Well, I said back in the day that realistically, you could just be in for this for 10 years, but that is on the long side of a rebuild. Remember, the Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams rebuild started in 2016, didn't see fruit until 2020. So that's relatively quick that happened, but we saw it also relatively quickly end the year after that when they won the division 21, and then 22 it fizzled out, and then it'll be just done. I think Chris is, while I disagreed with his initial hiring and how he got the job, Chris Getz is, I think that he's doing the right things to start a rebuild where he's trading off all the assets pretty much that are valuable to get back good assets, and having the hirings that he's had so far, with initially the Brian Bannister hiring, and now getting other players and other people, the McKinnons and of the world here with the White Sox, the more teachers, and the fact that they actually got a manager that I trust and Will Venable, that like he was a wanted guy. Like, this is a thing. So while I do still disagree that the White Sox as a whole, because the top is still jaded and the top is still messed up with Jerry Reinsdorf, I think Chris Getz is insulating himself from that top area with Jerry Reinsdorf, with good people underneath him. So if you're a White Sox fan, I would say realistically 5 years. Like 5 years should be the expectation of this to bear actual fruit of competing in the AL Central. Now, if they don't get there by then, would I be surprised? No, because I know that when it's time for them to do the final thing, because you can get all the prospects you want, you can get all the draft people right, and you can have the player progressions going correctly, player development go correctly. But even with the Astros and with the Cubs, at the end of the day, you're going to need the pocketbook to come out to get your John Lesters, to get your player that you didn't develop, and that position you didn't develop, like the White Sox haven't developed a right fielder and or second baseman in ages. Go and get him from the free agent market. Jerry, I don't know if he'll do that, if he'll be with the White Sox at that time. So that's the problem I have with the White Sox. Like, you can do all the right stuff under the sun and have everybody hit, but still it's a 26-man roster. It's going to be very hard for every single player that they bring into this organization to hit. And for the players that don't hit, they need to go and supplement that with free agent signings. And I don't think the White Sox will be able to do that or willing to do that.
I think the other thing is, and I've talked about it on past shows, is also providing a second or third wave of prospects is also going to be important. Drafting, not just having one or two good drafts, having 3, 4, 5, 6 drafts that continually produce players. Because as you saw in the previous rebuild, that didn't necessarily happen. It kind of just ended really with that first wave. So is that one thing that, maybe if they can continue to string drafts and international free agent signings, can that at least maybe allow sustained success? Because that's the other thing I talked about yesterday. There's no sustained success right now because of the rapid decline of all those core players.
Yeah, and we can see that they know how to draft pitchers, starting pitchers in particular, and develop those guys, because even if you look at their top 10 and top 30 prospects, it's very pitcher heavy. The hitters they got are from this Boston trade. They're not very good at developing the hitters. So yes, you need to hit on multiple drafts where you're having actual surplus of draft picks that are just teaming and ready to go. You can see the whole Baltimore thing going on right now. They have people ready to go at all times if a person gets hurt. Same thing with Boston. That's why they had all those players available to get rid of, because they had so many outfielders that they had to play and so many catchers in their system that were major league ready or on the cusp of that. The Dodgers are continuing having a system of, we have a bunch of players available, and mostly we're going to use those players to trade for our big time players that we need to acquire to compete more, because there's very few and far between you see a Dodger farmhand come from drafted, developed into the system. Most of the players they have are players that they traded for or signed big time free agents, but they still have a big, huge stock of players available for them to go and see if they need to supplement the major league squad. So yeah, the White Sox have struggled on that, and this is a good first step for the White Sox as far as the Crochet trade, replenishing and getting up this farm system up to a top 10 farm system. But you need to hit next year. I know it's only a 10th pick, but it's not just the first pick of the draft. It's the second, the third, the fourth, and subsequent rounds. And like you were saying, yeah, you need to hit in 2026 when possibly you get the number 1 pick or a top 5 at the top. And hopefully that's a generational talent that can come up and help the team immediately. Not the first year, but 2-3 years down the line, that guy is at the top of your rotation or at the top of your lineup, hitting and driving in players and driving in runs. And like you said, 2017, 2027, 2028, still hitting good drafts. And that'll be paramount for the White Sox to do that. And then after you do hit the drafts, actually develop them correctly.
Yeah, and the other thing that I just thought about too is when you talked about the previous rebuild, you look back now at the 2018 draft, that was technically a garbage first round draft. I mean, you had to go to Nico Horner was the top guy, so you're also at the mercy of who is in your pool. That's why it just stinks not to be able to have the number 1 pick, because you're going to miss out on another holiday. But have you ever actually seen a franchise lean this much into promoting how many top 100 prospects they have? Because I don't seem to see like the San Diego Padres or, again, the Brewers or the Cubs celebrating, hey, we got all these guys in MLB Pipeline's top 100. Have you ever recalled seeing this?
Not really, because I think, people like to do that when they're down. Like, the Dodgers are not touting how good their system is, and their system might be a little down right now. But yeah, teams that do that are not good at the major league level. You don't see the Baltimore Orioles talk about all the prospects they have. They talk about us winning the AL East a couple of years in a row. And so I think the White Sox system being so poor in the last couple of years, they're just trying to tout and pat themselves on the back. It's like, see how quickly we went from bottom of the cupboard team on 25th, 26th, 27th, maybe even 30th in some publications, minor league system. Now we're in the top 5 according to some. So yeah, I see why they do it, and I see why they're talking about all the players they got. But as I said before, majority of those players, or a good portion of those players, are from this Boston trade where you got players from a different system. They're not your players you drafted and you developed. They're from another system. And that's the same thing that happened with Rick Hahn in the first trade that we had, in the first rebuild that we had. White Sox had a system that was middling to bad. Then they got all the surplus from the Sale, Quintana, the Adam Eaton trade. And then they became a top 10 farm system. And everybody's like, ooh, look at the White Sox. They're going to be here for years to come. And I remember Jeff Passan say, the team of the 2020s will be the White Sox. I mean, he was right the first 2 years.
Yeah. Talked about it on yesterday's show. I shared the tweet of it. That'll be a tweet that'll live in infamy when he was talking about, like, look at all these guys they have under club control. Turns out putting a lot of guys under club control means they can also be lazy on that. And, I guess that's where it circles down to. Should we also then have guarded optimism compared to just full out optimism? Because I'm seeing that debate in the Sox social media world for the fans is, well, don't tell me to not be optimistic. And then you got other people that are like, look, the previous rebuild failed. Why would it be any different this time?
I tell fans to fan how you want to. If you want to be optimistic about this time and this rebuild, go ahead and do your thing. But if you have a jaundiced side towards this because you've seen this and it's playing out very similar to the one before, by all means, I'm in between. I have optimism that Chris Getz, despite how he got his job, kind of knows what he's doing, knows that he's not smart enough to run this organization by himself. And so he gets smarter people than himself to be around him, to fill out the spots that he is weak at. And so I have optimism towards that. But as I said before, and that limiting factor will always be at the top of the food chain with Jerry Reinsdorf, where you need somebody to pitch in extra. They just got the $500,000 or $800,000 machine that you can use in batting practice that is simulates the pitchers. I forgot what it's the specific name is called, but it probably took
the international scouts the TrackMan. They just
gave
them,
yeah. And it's just like it takes a person like Chris Getz and the people that he is hiring to get to Jerry Reinsdorf to spend money to modernize this franchise. Jerry's still stuck in 2025 thinking about, or 2005 and thinking about, hey, I've done it before. Why can't the ways I did it in 2005 work in 2025? Because it doesn't, Jerry. You need to modernize this franchise. And you can hear the players around the league talk about when they get here, especially like the Joe Kellys, the Kendall Gravemans of the world. And yeah, they might be pieces of trash after the fact, but they're talking about, hey, when I was with the Mariners, they had this, that, and the other. I was with the Astros, they had this, that, and the other. And the White Sox don't have this. The Dodgers treat their people this way, and we fly on this type of plane, and the White Sox fly on this type of plane, type of stuff. And so you need to have Jerry come to the table and realize that he's the problem. And mirrors in the Reinsdorf house are hard to come by. But I'm glad that Chris Getz is at least giving him just a little shadow of himself and saying, hey, this is the person that's ruining us. This is the person that needs to open the pocketbook. And his last couple of years, since you're not going to sell the team, you might as well go out like Mike Ilitch of the Detroit Tigers and say, I'm going to put all the money I can to this effort to make sure that when I do pass along, fans will know that I did everything in my power to modernize this team and to give this team the best chance to win in the AL Central and beyond.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't get the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. Now let's switch into the offseason moves. Obviously, not a lot of money was spent. Basically, I think like $12 million. You've got, Andrew Vaughn is the third highest paid player, and he's at $5.4 million. But this was clear. I mean, I do kind of agree with Chris Getz. This really wasn't the offseason to spend a ton of money.
Yeah, they really aren't in any position to compete yet, and they're just coming off the worst regular season that a team's had in ever, 121 losses for the White Sox. And so it's a slow build, and they're doing some smart things with their money. I might not agree with all the signings that they've had and what they're doing with their international money. And I just saw James Fox on the Beef show. I forgot what it's called, the Au Jus with Beef Loaf, talking about the White Sox don't spend all their international signing money. Like, why not? Just blow it out. Like, what is it? Why are you putting in your pocket for? Doesn't make sense. So I, disagree with their still miserly ways there. But yeah, there's no reason to get a middling player or get a player just to say that you were spending money, kind of like the Oakland A's did, where they had to go and get, Severino to give money so they can have some type of floor and all the rest of the owners can get off their cases. The White Sox don't need to spend any money. Getting rid of contracts like Gavin Sheets was perfect. It's a smart thing to do. He is who he is. He's going to be who he is, and there's no reason to pay him $3, $4, $5 million just to be himself forever. If Andrew Vaughn wasn't the 4th or 3rd pick overall, he would not be on this team right now. The fact that he is the 3rd pick overall is the only reason he is the 3rd highest paid player on this team, because he is underachieved in his whole career and going into his 5th season as a major league player. So, yeah, I think that the White Sox need to just establish who they are this year. Like, have all the young players who can play, are ready to play on this team, and see after a while, like after this 162, okay, we saw what this guy did in his year 1 or year 2. Do we move on with this player, or is there something in this player's anatomy or his ability to learn that we can't even deal with anymore? So that's this year. I think that's what it's mostly about, evaluating the players that you actually do have in your system. And those 1-year players, I don't think they're going to get you anything back. Like Tommy Pham didn't get you much back last year. You got something back for Eric Fetty, but you kind of discounted it because you put Tommy Pham and threw in Michael Kopech out there, and you see how that's working out. That man turned into Michael Kopech out there in LA. So when you get these 1-year deals with Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater, when July comes around, yeah, teams will be sniffing around, but you're not going to get anything worth the future for these players when you eventually do trade them. So trade them away to be traded and get some lottery ticket in the single A maybe to come back up like they did with the Dodgers when they did trade Michael Kopech.
Although, hey, I'll take any arm that projects to be a bullpen arm, because I never want to see a ton of money spent on the bullpen ever again, except for a closer. I'll make an exception. I had no problem with Liam Hendricks, but like you said, spending on Kendall Graveman, spending on Joe Kelly, that never then resolved your, because Jerry's going to give you just limited dollars, that never resolved your second base and right field. The other thing I just want to quickly circle back to what you were saying that brought up, it is to the life of me, I don't understand why the White Sox are not crushing it in international signing and play, because that's the one place where like you could still have Jerry's romanticism about old school scouting, because you're talking about trying to project what a 15 or 16-year-old kid can do. Like, you think Jerry would be all about it. I just don't get it, unless is there like this major fallout from that scandal that they had a couple of years ago. It baffles me that they do have this like stringent with international signing, when it could be like, Jerry, this is kind of how it used to be back in 1958. You should be, leaning into it, buddy.
Yeah, and these are the players that you could hit big on. Like, you don't have to sign them for much. They're the perfect player. That's why, the pipe dream of getting Sasaki was a pipe dream, but I'm glad that they went all in for it, even though he didn't even meet with them. Like, it's a perfect pitcher for Jerry. You don't have to pay him for much years or pay him at all that much. So go all in for the players that are cheaper, and you can probably put a lot of money, a lot of resources towards that. Because think about where the White Sox international players do come from now. The Dominican, Venezuela, Cuba. We barely have any Japanese players. I think we need to spend more time in the Japanese market for the White Sox and establish something like we established with the Cuban market long time ago with Minnie Minoso, and then have continued that throughout. So having only 3 Japanese players in the White Sox long storied history, I think it's embarrassing. And I hope the new international scout looks to the Japanese and Korean markets for these players that the White Sox have skipped over for pretty much their whole existence.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like sounding like an echo chamber, because I'm going to agree with you, because not only that, it's a great way to get some players that can immediately help you. Like, again, Sasaki's 23, but he's going to come in, probably pitch right away and help you. And especially, Iguchi, you had a World Series hero. You actually were starting to open up that market to you 20 years ago, and then for some reason it shut off. And especially, like, yeah, I have no problem if they're going to go with Venezuela. You have a great brand still technically in Venezuela. You have Ozzie Guillen, who's the godfather of baseball there, plus Louis Aparicio, all that stuff. and the Dominican with those athletes. But yeah, I don't get it why they haven't put in. So if you're not going to spend all your bonus pool money, at least spend some money to have a presence in those 5 markets, and then just pound those markets then, because again, it's extra talent that you can add that's probably not going to be nowhere near what you'd have to spend on a first round pick that's going to cost you $9 million. So who are you looking forward to in terms of what player that they've acquired, whether it's through the Crochet trade or even just one of their minor signings that you're kind of looking forward to seeing play this year?
Well, firstly, it's probably that same Crochet trade, the 2 players I'm looking for the most. I like Kyle Teal, but I don't know what he's going to be ultimately. I don't know who any of these players are going to be ultimately. But Braden Montgomery, I wanted the White Sox to draft him when they had the 6th pick in the draft this past, or the 5th pick in the draft, where they went with Hagen Smith. And that's understood. Hagen Smith is awesome. He is one of the top lefties in the minor leagues. The White Sox have the 2 top lefties in the minor league system of all MLB with him. And I can't remember his name, Noah Schultz. And so that was a smart pick. It was great. And so I was kind of sad that they didn't get Braden Montgomery. And I think the only reason that Braden Montgomery fell to 12, I think that what number that the Boston got him at, was he got hurt late in his Texas A&M career. And he broke his ankle, I believe that is. And so he couldn't really play in the College World Series at the extent that he wanted to. He was out for the year. And so that hurt his draft stock. Before that, people were projecting him to be a top 5, top 6 player in the draft. He had played his first couple of years at Stanford, so playing in the Pac-12, a really tough conference, which pretty much is non-existent anymore because the Pac-12 has dissipated because of football, and it's going to come back, but whatever, it's going to be at a smaller scale. Then he transferred over to Texas A&M, playing in probably the hardest conference in baseball in the SEC, and he thrived in both of those conferences, hit a bunch of bombs, and he is a plus arm, plus outfielder out there in right field. So I think that maybe not this year, because it'll be his first professional year of playing, because he was hurt all of last year after he did mess his ankle up. And so he'll be in the White Sox system. I think they're probably going to start him at high A and get him acclimated. But I could see him climbing quickly, because I think the skill set is that of such where his bat's going to play immediately. The swing and miss is a little too much right now, but I hope the White Sox and the new guy, Ryan Fuller, can get his swing down to something more compact, where he's batting barrel up the ball a little bit more consistently. Now, when they are talking about their first rebuild, one of the people that the White Sox put a lot of eggs in the basket was Nick Madrigal. And they talked about smart, baseball IQ, base running, bat-to-ball skills. He's a good hitter, good batter up there. We saw most of that stuff wasn't true. Like, he wasn't a good defensive player. His base running was piss poor. He wasn't. He was a good bat to ball guy. They called him Nicky Two Strikes for a reason, but it was all singles. It was all just garbage hits, and that's why at the end of the day, they're like, "This is not it." He's not the player that we drafted 4th overall in the draft. He's not a guy that is going to do the thing that we need him to do. I think Chase Meidroth is that guy. He is what Nicky Madrigal was promised to be. He seems like a really smart player. And I know when people think about being a good hitter, they only think about bat to ball. But this guy is a walker. He doesn't swing outside and chase pitches outside the zone. That's what a good batter is to me. A person that knows when he needs to swing, and when he does swing, he puts bat to ball at a consistent pace and gets on base via either the hit or the walk. And I'm very excited to see Chase Meidroth. And I hope they just say, okay, whoever wins the second base or shortstop position, I don't know who's going to do it. If it's going to be leaning Sosa or whatever, put Chase Meidroth on the opposite side of that and let him go. Just let him do his thing. Hit him at the top of the order. Maybe not number 1, maybe 2, just to set the table. That guy is going to get on base. He has shown that skill throughout his college career at the University of San Diego and through his time with the Boston minor league system, especially last year in Worcester. So I think Chase Meidroth will be the guy that Nicky Madrigal was not.
Yeah, Meidroth is actually one of the guys that I'm most excited to see. I've even made a bet with Bez from On Tap Sportsnet that I think he can get 70 walks in 125 games or more. He's the modern day Greek god of walks, in Moneyball. He just does not, I think I had Chris Clegg on the show a while back, said, like, it's really hard to get him to actually move the bat if he doesn't see his pitch. And as you said, he's a guy that you could probably put at the top of the order. Even then, okay, say he's not a great hitter, but say he still gets on walks, you can put him at the bottom of the order to, re-rack the whole system if you needed to. So that's who I am. And then I'm also excited to see Colson Montgomery just to eventually see, is he going to reach his ceiling of Corey Seager, or is he going to reach his floor of Paul DeJong? But are you concerned at all about this, fluctuation of Colson Montgomery's rankings, or is it finally, I'm at the point where it's like, I just want to see what this guy can do at the big leagues?
I would love for him to tear up AAA for a good portion, at least 2-3 months. And he was starting to do it at the end of his AAA year. I think the frustration of him struggling for the first time in his career, like he probably as a little leaguer, high schooler, killed the ball. And we saw when he did in 2022 or 2023, what he did there in those couple levels that he went through. Then you get up to AAA and it's a different beast. And he was talking about having frustrations of not doing the things that he usually does and how these pitchers are pitching to spots. They're not just looking for spots. They're pitching to spots and they're getting players out. It wasn't that level from AA to AAA was an actual step up, and he was getting frustrated with himself. And then he realized that it's a step and I need to be calm and not take all this frustration out on myself and be hard on myself. I need to calm down and enjoy what's going on and the progression that's going on. There's no pressure on me to be something that I'm not. He's 23 still. He's still very, very young. So what I would like for him to do is to kill spring training and have the conversation is, do we break camp with this guy? And if they don't, send him back down to AAA and see what he can do for a couple months. And if he is that guy that you thought he would be, I don't need him to be hitting 300. I just need you to see that he is hitting the ball with authority down there. He is not looking frustrated. He is not looking overmatched like he did time after time last year with a lot of strikeouts last year. And I don't necessarily mind strikeouts. I'm not that person, but I mind when you don't know what the pitcher is doing to you and you're striking out. If you can just do like he did in the last couple of months where he's just simplifying his swing, understands where the ball is going to be pitched at and how they're trying to get him out, and improving on those weak spots, and then while improving on his strengths, I think the kid he has a ceiling of Corey Seager for a reason. And I think that we're rushing our judgments based upon his high rank initially. Like when we draft him, it's like, oh, yeah, he's a Corey Seager. Then when hit the minors, he hit pretty much like we thought he would hit. In 23, he was going up there. He was the 9th ranked prospect. And then when you see him downshift to 38th now, you're like, and then I got to look back and say, he's 22, 23 years old. He's still very young in his progression. He came right out of high school. And I think that we as a fan base need to not put so much pressure on him. And he needs to not put so much pressure on himself to realize that there is none this year. Come up and be as bad as you want to, because the record won't matter. It's just about getting experience. And then after 2025, going home, seeing what you did in that 2025, whether it's good or bad, and working on the things that you need to improve on and strengthening the things that you did do well in the major leagues. And I'm excited to see him, whether it's opening day or the middle of June when he gets called up, because I think it will be this year that he does get called up.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you want to just, with no expectations, see what he can do at some point. So I agree. Whether it's in April or, I mean, even talking to you, I was thinking it might make more sense, to have him come up in May or mid-June, just because eventually baseball is going to come for him. Is it after a 2-week stretch? Is it after a 3-week stretch? And do you want it to maybe be more in the dog days? And then that way, there's still some shine on it, because there's nothing worse than a prospect comes up, goes 0 for 26. And now the pressure is really on, the guy to have to hit. And then he's a failed prospect. And it's like, no, that you can come up and sometimes rake right away, and then it comes back to you, or you struggle, but then you eventually figure it out. So I totally get that. So it sounds like James Karinchak is probably not your favorite signing.
No, I mean, I just think he was kind of a douchebag in Cleveland. I mean, from some of his Instagram posts, his miles per hour way down in his last year with Cleveland in 2023. He pretty much pitched the whole year in 2024 with the injury with the Cleveland minor league squad. It's a signing that doesn't hurt the White Sox at all. I just don't like the person. Now, if he turns into the old James Karinchak, where he's a mid-2s, low-3s ERA guy, where you can flip him at the trade deadline for somebody who wants that type of player, even the Cleveland Guardians wanting him back, God bless. But those are the type of signings in the bullpen you want. You want low-level minor league signings, invites to spring training that been into them in the major league type of guys, not signing the Joe Kellys and Ken Ravens of the world. He might work out. It might be like a Justin Anderson situation, like where he's been out of the league for a couple of years and he captures something that Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz see something and he gets himself right. But yeah, I just don't like the person. The player is fine if he is the guy that he was with the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that's being made overlooked is, or being made a big deal of that shouldn't be, is like, who's the opening day starter? Well, it's a day. I know it's the honor. I know it's this guy's technically our number one, but a lot of times it can be just the matchup. I think one thing that's being overlooked is who's going to be the closer. And I know this team's not going to win a lot of games, but they blew 37 saves. They do need someone to at least shut down a game when, if in those rare leads that they have. And Karinchak could maybe be that guy, considering he does have 11 saves in 2021. Maybe he's not. Maybe it's more Justin Anderson. Who knows? But that's kind of what I'm looking for, is who can emerge at least to protect some leads late in the game. Because how many times do we see leads get blown in 2024? It's a big reason why they only won 41 games.
Yeah, if he works out to be that guy, I definitely think the White Sox will turn him around and get him out of here by July and have something that will of value to come back to them. But yeah, if it's him or, like you said, Justin Anderson, I'll be fine with that. But yeah, that was a bugaboo for the White Sox. I would always, when the White Sox had a lead, like maybe in the 6th inning, I'm like, all right, this is going to be blown somehow. So I'll be going to the other side and going for a money line bet for the other team and cash in, because the White Sox inevitably would be giving up those leads. And I think they only won one game where they were trailing after 6 innings and then actually came back and won.
And it came against the Angels at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
When the Angels were like, let's just get the car started.
Ooh, the Angels at the end of the year were so ready to go.
Oh yeah, they were. That's one of the reasons why the Sox, remember everybody was so upset about them not breaking the record at home. It was like, well, it's not going to happen because the Angels just could care less. They did not want to be playing baseball anymore. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts. This show is available on all major podcast platforms. When it comes to the White Sox, though, and content, it's been very hard to develop and kind of create content with how this team has been so bad, but there's still a marketplace for Sox content. Because I think that. What do you think about, that marketplace for? Because there's a lot of fans there. Some people think they're apathetic, but really people are still wanting to consume this team. They just don't want Jerry Reinsdorf involved, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, there is no shortage of White Sox fans. Like, despite the record, despite the owner, you go from the 108's meeting at the Reggie's the other day, full capacity crowd of people there, excited to talk about the White Sox, excited to talk to each other about the White Sox. White Sox fans, and I use this term as it was intended, are diehard fans. Like, you can try to kill them, but they're still going to be around. They're like the most resilient fans in sports, not just in baseball, in sports. Because think about all the things this team, this ownership group has done to them. You know these numbers. I don't know if people do. Since 2005, they've won 3 postseason games. 3? Not 3 postseason series, 3 postseason games in 20 years. And 3 championships in their history. Like, there's nothing there, but yet and still, go to Twitter. White Sox Twitter is the most feisty. They're there. I know I might be in an echo chamber, but when you put up those polls and Major League puts up those polls and they do something where there's like, who's the best fan base? White Sox fans show up and they vote for their team. Like, they're very resilient. And so there's a lot of people wanting content. And that's why there are so many White Sox podcasts. And while you look at the other side of town, there's not a lot of Cubs podcasts out there because I don't think that fan base wants to hear Cub content as much as the Sox fans want to hear their content from different sources. That's what White Sox fans are. They're diverse. They have different opinions, and that's what you want. You want them to have a 108 opinion. You want them to have a Sox on Tap opinion, a Sports Bums opinion. You know, you want to have different things out there, a Locked On Sox opinion. That's why this is a thing and will always be a thing forever. Locked On Sox is one of the first daily, I think is the first daily one podcast that started, and you're continuing the tradition that people want to hear about the White Sox every single day when they wake up, no matter if it's good, bad, indifferent. And there's a lot of people out there that want their White Sox talk, and they want some White Sox conversations to happen, no matter if they're the 121 lost team.
Well, and you're going to be joining us again back in the podcast world. What do you got planned in your next endeavor?
Well, the good folks at Just Baseball have extended an offer for myself and another former guy from CHGO, Ryan Herrera. So we're doing a split podcast. Like, I'll do my own White Sox show. He'll do his own Cubs show. We'll be under the same RSS, where we're just talking about Chicago baseball. So I'll be handling the White Sox thing. So I'll have my solo show. It'll probably be 30 minutes. It'll be weekly, usually on Wednesdays or Sundays, just to recap what happened that week with White Sox baseball and give my opinions on what's going to happen the week before. I'll occasionally pop in for an exciting series just to talk about it after the game. But for the most part, it'll be a weekly series with one show each week on Sunday nights just to talk about how I'm feeling about the White Sox, give my unbiased opinion and unfiltered opinion about where the White Sox are at that current point. So the name is TBA, but it'll just be me talking with some varied guests, and sometimes just me going on the mic like I started here on the Locked On Sox. I used to be by myself until Tanny joined me 6 months in.
Well, Herb, I appreciate you starting everything here on the Locked On White Sox podcast, and good luck to you, and thank you for your time.
Todd, thank you for being here, and thank you for your great work here with Locked On. It's been a journey here, and like I said, people want this content, and you doing this daily is a godsend. As I know, doing daily White Sox podcasts is very hard, but I had two other people with me. Doing it by yourself, man, kudos.
Appreciate it. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with the guys from Sox in the Basement podcast to talk about the upcoming spring training battles. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion with Herb Lawrence. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.